Hi, everybody. Okay. I'm going to begin reading. And like I said, I'm going to try to get a big chunk done. Okay. The very rich and the very titled did not come to the studio. Leonardo went to them. One evening, while frantically finishing preparations for the tournaments, Leonardo and Salai went to the house of San Servino. They carried with them the costumes of the Scythians. When they arrived, the footmen who were to take part in the tournament took off the clothes they were wearing and tossed them onto a couch and began to rummage around the assortment of garments, pulling out a pair of trousers and a jerkin that would fit. They tried on one thing and another and took time out to admire themselves and each other with each garment they added. Ah, Master Leonardo, you are a genius. Whatever Leonardo touches turns into a work of art. Ah, Leonardo, you are much too smart for one man. Salai stood aside and listened. This was not praise. This was talk, 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 talk. Taste with no mind of its own. These were words thrown at Leonardo as one throws seeds to the pigeons of the piazza. One gentleman named Francisco called to Leonardo. I must see you a minute. He pulled the master aside and engaged him in a private conversation for a full 5 minutes. Leonardo nodded several times and smiled several others. He said as little as he ever did. Francisco walked away from Leonardo and rejoined the group. Oh, he announced, Leonardo quite agrees with me. Salai sat there on the couch on top of the heap of jackets and listened to them. They were not worth Leonardo's attention. But there he was, repeating the same answers to the same compliments. There he was, accepting praise from this unrefined, uneducated bunch of men, no more grown up, except for height, than Salai himself. They were deaf men praising a concert. No, they were even worse, for they could hear, but they would not. They were overgrown puppies standing between a saucer of meat and a mother's teat, knowing that the saucer is full of nourishment but too lazy to chew. Content to be told what is in the saucer as they continue suckling and telling each other how close they came to tasting solid food. So this was Leonardo's audience, a flock of grackles, noisy, wearing glossy plumage, mindless. Leonardo deserved better. He deserved informed appreciators. Salai rested on top of the heap of jackets and rolled over to face the wall, to face away from them. As he turned, he heard the jingle of coins. His hands began to explore, first one jacket and then another, and when he found the coins, he pocketed them as quickly and quietly as he had explored for them. He stayed on the couch as long as he could. He stayed there until Leonardo called for him to help the men undress. It was Francisco who missed his money. Before he said anything, he went over to the couch and he searched in and around and under it. Then he hurried over to his host, San Servino, and whispered something to him. San Servino smiled and nodded. It seems, he announced to the group, that Francisco has lost some money. Perhaps someone picked it up by mistake. Let's do this, he said. He pulled a small table into the middle of the room. Let's all turn out our backs to the table from the front, face the wall, and close our eyes. Then the person who accidentally picked up Francisco's purse can return it, and he won't be embarrassed. San Servino looked right at Salai and said that. Salai returned his look, no blush, no blink. They started to turn to face the wall, and San Servino said, I'll count to 30, and then we'll all turn back. Everyone, even Francisco, began to regard catching the thief as a game. This was a laughter as they had all turned around to face the wall. San Servino counted slowly, and when he reached 30, everyone turned around, expectantly, but the table was bare. Disappointed, but determined to remain cheerful, San Servino said, all right, this was just a trial. Now I want everyone to quietly search for the missing money. This time we will turn around after the count of 35. They all turned to face the wall again. While they were turned, they heard someone walk up to the table very quietly. There were 2 thieves present, Salai thought. Then he got mad. Someone else got part of Francisco's money. This time, everyone fidgeted until San Servino finished his counting. 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. Everyone swung around and saw a piece of paper in the middle of the table. San Servino swaggered over and smiling picked it up. Everyone looked at the spot under the table, empty. San Servino looked at the paper, turned it over, and grabbed the seat of his pants. Francisco reached for the paper and read it. Don't turn your back on us again, Servino. Your pants are ripped. The theft and the game dissolved into laughter, and Francisco did not recover his wallet. Sly felt relieved to know that there was not another thief in the place. As they walked home, Leonardo said, You took Francisco's wallet, did you not, Sly? I, sir? No, sir. Confess, now. I will not reveal you to the crowd. I shall quietly return it. By messenger. They will never know. I will simply like the truth from you. Confess, Sly. I did not take it, Master Leonardo. I think you did, Sly. Far be it from me, sir, to argue with what the greatest mind in all of Milan thinks. Don't offer hollow compliments, Sly. When you sound like Sanferzino's friends, you earn only my contempt. Did you take the wallet, Sly? No, master. Well, perhaps Francisco deserves a little bit of to be a little bit embarrassed. Yes, sir, the boy said. Sly waited until the day that the Duchess Beatrice was to enter the city of Milan to spend his ill-gotten money. The streets were jammed. It was like a carnival, but better, because nothing was worn out or being used for even the second time. Leonardo had new clothes made for him, a gold brocade vest, and a party-colored hose. He stood before his master, and Leonardo reached for a comb and rearranged his curls. There was no detail involving beauty that was too small to command Leonardo's attention. He laid the comb down, studied the effect, his head tilted, and he took a few stray curls in between his fingers and placed them behind the boy's ears. He turned the young boy around and pointed him toward the door. Go, Sly, see it all. The boy wandered alone through the streets. He found a vendor of sweets on the street of the armorers and bought from them his entire supply of anise comfits. He silently thanked Francisco when he noted that he still had some coins left. Sly, dressed in his very best, surveyed Milan, dressed in its very best. Walls and balconies were hung with satin and the bright colors, and the brocades woven with threads of gold. Chains of ivy were draped over doorways and wrapped around columns. But the best street of all was the one where Sly walked, the street of the armor makers. Both sides of the avenue were lined with straw men on wooden horses. They were dressed in chain mail plates of steel. The straw men carried lances, and Sly was more pleased than if they had been alive. For now they stayed still, and Sly could entertain himself by examining the engraved pictures on the steel breastplates. He thought that if he were laid end to end, they would tell the story of every battle, of every war, even the wars of the gods of ancient Rome. Sly considered it far better to learn history from such scenes than from reading. Reading took a lot more effort. He ambled along the street of the armorers, eating his sweets, trying to limit himself to 1 cake per stop. But some of the men in the armor were so interesting that he stopped for a long time, and he allowed himself sometimes 2, sometimes 3. From the street of the armorers, he walked to the piazza in front of the castle. There the crowd was thick. He could easily have worked his way to the front of the crowd, using the techniques he had learned in his days of picking pockets. But the smell of the crowd held him back like a harness. Only months before, he would never have noticed that people had an odor at all, but living with Leonardo, he had grown accustomed to sweet smells. For his visits home, he had began to carry a perfumed handkerchief to sniff. He reached in his sack for more cookies and found that they were all gone. He felt relieved that they were. Had there been more, he didn't know if he could bear the responsibility of finishing them. He tried to penetrate the crowd again when he heard 100 trumpets. The crowd called, She comes, she comes. Everyone pressed closer toward the edge of the piazza, and Salai felt the weight and smell of the mob create a force that propelled him from the center. He gave up hope of seeing the Duchess arrive. Then Francisco, the absent Francisco, came to his rescue. Salai reached in his pocket and took a coin from it. He poked the tallest man within range of his arm. "I'll give you this if you let me stand on your shoulders," Salai said. The man took the coin and boosted Salai up. Ludovico and his bride stopped at the entrance. Stopped at the entrance to the castle. All the nobles were waiting there for them. The Duchess was lifted down from her carriage, and as she was, a hush seemed to pass through the crowd. Salai looked at the new Duchess from her perch upon the man's shoulders. "Why, she's small and dark and perfectly plain," he said, and after pronouncing judgment, he drew in a deep breath and was overwhelmed by nausea. His throat slid upward, and he slipped his cookies all over the man in front of him, as well as the top of the man whose shoulders he had rented. The wedding festivities went on for a week. Leonardo was called upon to everything. He even designed the shelves for the display of the wedding gifts. These small jobs kept him from his important work, and Leonardo both loved and hated that. Toward the end of the week, the festivities included a play for which Leonardo had designed the costumes and the revolving stage. The play was called Paradise, and it was a great success. After the performance, Salai had gone to bed late and with his head pounding from having emptied the unfinished glasses of wine. He awoke to a great pounding at the door and a voice proclaiming, "Prepare yourselves, prepare yourselves." Salai pulled the covers over his ears. He couldn't distinguish between the pounding in his head and the pounding on the door. "Prepare yourselves" could only mean that he had died. It had been a bad, bad night, and that the forces of the devil had won the toss-up for his soul. How unfair, he thought, to be a boy and to have the appetites of a man. "Answer the door, Salai," Leonardo called. "Door, door, master." "Someone wants our attention." "Oh, yes, Master," Salai said. He jumped out of his bed into the cold room, the quickest he had ever done so, and he usually poked out one toe, then one foot, and allowed each knuckle to adjust to the air outside of his blankets. But this morning, Salai thought, the colder the better, the colder the farther he was from the fires of hell. "Prepare yourself," the door pounder yelled again. It was only a 50-second walk from his bed to the door, but that was all the time it took for Salai to change from gratitude at not being called to the gates of hell to annoyance at being called to the gates of the studio. And when he looked through the window and he saw that it was a page no older than himself who had ordered him to prepare himself, his annoyance became total. He opened the door just as the young man once again called, "Prepare yourself." "For what?" answered Salai. "Prepare yourself for a visit from the Duchess Leonora and her daughter, the Duchess Isabella." The two boys looked at each other over. Salai was bothered that such a fellow should catch him in his nightshirt. His new suit, the one that Leonardo had made for the festival, was not as fancy as the page boys, but nicer. Who are Leonora and Isabella?" Salai asked. "The Duchess Isabella is the sister to the Duchess Beatrice, and the Duchess Leonora is the mother to the Duchess Isabella as well as the Duchess Beatrice. That same Duchess Beatrice who is the wife of the Duke Ludovico Sforza, called Il Moro." He lowered his nose and asked, "Did you know that?" "Who might this Il Moro be?" asked Salai. The page gasped. "Is this not the home and workshop of Leonardo da Vinci? Even the stray cats of Milan know who Il Moro is. I mean Duke Il Moro." "The name sounds a little familiar," Salai said, "but the other, Leonardo da Vinci, does every stray cat in Milan know that name too?" "Even I know. I am from Mantua." "Mantua?" Salai asked. "Is that the street next to the sewer?" The page gasped. "Why, Mantua is the home of Isabella. I mean the Duchess Isabella, the sister of Beatrice. I mean the Duchess Beatrice." At that moment, Leonardo came to the door. "Enough, Salai. Go get dressed." Leonardo ran his hand over the top of Salai's head. He then turned to the page and said, "Tell the Duchess Leonora and Isabella that their servant Leonardo da Vinci awaits their visit with pleasure." How do you know? The page asked. I'm a stray cat, Leonardo answered. Now go. Tell them I am ready. The minute the door was closed, Salai told Leonardo what he thought of the stuck-up, self-important pages. Those guys, boss, are like a collection of jewelry, only not as valuable. Did you see how fancy? I'd like to see one of them, just one. Have to be an artist's apprentice once, just once. I'd like to see one of them having to cook up glue and varnish. I'd like to see what they would happen if their fancy clothes after they had to put in a full day's work. They do put in a full day's work, Sly. Yeah, sure. Just putting on all those clothes in a full day's work. They clean stables, Sly. The boy stopped short. You mean they pitch horses' manure dressed like that? No, Sly. Dressed like that, they tell artists and apprentices to prepare themselves. Now, suppose you do that. Suppose you go get dressed now. The ladies will be here shortly. When they arrive, Sly, I would like you to be beautiful and mute. Both Duchesses were beautiful. Isabella was a younger, thinner, more delicate version of her mother. Next to the two of them, Il Moro's new wife looked like the print of the page from which they were the colored illustrations. Poor plain Beatrice. No wonder that Il Moro, a man greatly interested in appearances, had made Isabella his first choice. Salai focused his attention on Isabella. She wore a semi-smile. It was not a happy smile, though. Her eyes were not that part of it. Sly had seen a smile like that before. Francisco looking in the mirror as he had tried on his costume for the festival. Yes, Beatrice's sister was one of those. She wore the smile of one who lived in a private bubble of good thoughts about herself. The Duchess Isabella lost no time at all in letting Leonardo know the purpose of her visit. She would like some paintings done by Leonardo. I already have an admirable collection. Your work will reside in good company. The first work I would like from you is a portrait of myself. I would like a portrait done with the same delicate shading you used in the portrait of Cecilia Galeriani, but I would not like to pose with a weasel. Next, I should like a portrait of a young Christ. First me and then Jesus. I shall arrange with my sister and my brother-in-law for the loan of you. I cannot imagine Il Moro refusing my request. I shall pose from 10 until 12 on Mondays and Thursdays. Leonardo knew that he was an employee. He also knew that he was fortunate in having as an employer a man who gave him as much freedom as Il Moro did. He would not mind working for Duchess Isabella as a favor to Il Moro. He certainly owed his patron that much. But the thought of being loaned as they loaned each other dwarves and jesters, the thought was despicable. And the thought of having to paint Isabella every Monday and every Thursday, to know that his work would be held together by two such bars of time, was to make a prison of his week. Leonardo was well schooled in the manners of the court. My dearest lady, he said, I would be most delighted to do your portrait. I am certain that the Duke Il Moro would not mind my postponing my work on the model of the horse for the monument to his to his illustrious father. My work on the monument has been delayed many times. I am certain that the Duke will not mind a longer delay. When he asks, tell him I estimate only a year and a half to complete your assignments in Mantua. Isabella lifted an eyebrow. I understand, she said. Never let it be said that anyone understands talent better than I. If it is not possible for you to come to Mantua, I would like, then, some small pieces of sculpture. Something you can work on in your studio here. You should be very flattered, Leonardo, that I want something from your hand. I am very selective about the works I accumulate. I think that a small bust of the young Christ would be a very nice thing to own. Salai knew that Leonardo did not like sculpture. The work was messy. Sculptors had been written in his notebooks, create their own work by the strength of their arms, and this is accomplished only by great sweat, which mixes with the marble dust. The marble dust spreads over everything like flour, so that you cannot tell if you have in your studio a baker or an artist. A painter, on the other hand, sits before his work in a clean house, at ease, well-dressed, and listens to music, and he dips his brush in delicate color. So Isabella wanted either her portrait done or a work of sculpture. Was there nothing she could propose that would have appeal? It took every ounce of Salai's will to keep quiet. Leonardo tried to say something, but he was not too quick enough, for no sooner had Isabella proposed a small piece of a sculpture, a small bust of young Christ, than she looked around the room and lowered her eyes just enough for them to fall on Salai. This child will do, she said. Come here, boy. What is your name? Never mind. I don't want to know. If he is to be a model of Christ, it is better than he have no name. Giving him a name can only give him personal prestige. It distracts from the work, don't you think? You see, Leonardo, I'm not unversed in the arts. I have ideas. You must come to Mantua sometime so that we can discuss theories of art. It will be a real exchange of ideas. She got up. Come along, mother, she said. She paused at the door and added, send me sketches. My dear sister Beatrice and my beloved brother-in-law have promised to write every day, every single day. You may use their messengers. I'll speak to Beatrice about it. No, one second thought. I'll speak to Il Moro. He can't refuse me anything, it seems. She and her mother nodded goodbye and they left. Leonardo leaned back against the closed door and shook his head as if he had just come up from water. He held his hands over his ears. Well, boss, Salai said, there's no need ever again to tell me to be mute in the presence of Duchess Isabella. My only wish is that her presence I was just deaf. Salai paused and said, Are you going to pose me for young Christ? I shall start on it after all my other duties are finished. By then, I shall have a great beard as yours, Salai said. Leonardo smiled, and so did Salai. Okay, guys, I am going to stop there. Okay. All right, so just make sure you guys put all of this into your into a narration, and I will remember the chocolate this time, I promise. And I will see you all on Tuesday. Blessings.